This is what I love about kids. They get it, they hear it, they latch onto it, and then they implement it. And she's like, my life I'm so much happier. I have so much more joy, and I'm thriving. That's possible for us as adults. Welcome back to the 5-Star Life Show. I'm your host, Coach Seth, and I'm joined with my incredible co-host via Zoom, Coach Mia.
Hey, Seth. We're having a little trouble here getting all set up, but you sound good.
Oh, thank you. You sound good. You look good. And we're going to have a great show. If you just tuned in, thanks so much. I want to remind you that you can actually catch these episodes anywhere podcasts are streamed. You can also watch us on YouTube at the 5-Star Life. And I just want to encourage you, if you're a return customer, please hit the like button. Please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. You can go back to the archives and catch up on past episodes. But we're going to have a great conversation today, Mia. We're going to really start by just asking a question. And the question is, has fear limited you from having the personality that you want to have and becoming the person you want to be? That's question number one. Another way to ask that is this: has fear influenced you in the way you feel about yourself, in the way you express yourself, or in the way people perceive you or interact with you? Is fear influencing that? That's going to be the focus of today's show.
Wow. Those are good questions. You're going to have to repeat them again, though.
So we are in the middle of filming a series for students where we're talking about how to transform their personalities. So many kids say, Coach Seth, I don't like myself. I don't like my personality. I'm awkward. I'm shy. I'm this. I'm that. And there's so much misinformation out there, and they don't realize that we actually have the power to shape our personality. I don't have the same personality I did when I was 10 years old, when I was 20 years old, when I was 30 years old. I've continued to grow and develop. But today we're going to talk about the impact that fear has in shaping our personality, whether we know it or not.
Well, that's good. Teach me.
So one of the things that I experienced was from my childhood. I was probably 18 years old, 17 years old, and I started to realize that for some strange reason, when I was around Black adult men, I would have this strange feeling come over me, and I didn't know what was going on. It was like I felt insecure. I felt uptight. It would change the way I interacted with those people. Like I wasn't myself. And you either have the choice to just say, oh, that's how it is, or you can dive in and say, what's going on? And I chose to dive in and say, what's wrong with me? Why am I doing this? What is this? Where's this coming from? And as I dove in, I started to unpack the fact that, you know what? As a baby, I was rejected by my biological father. And it's kind of weird. Some people think, well, that had nothing to, like, how would that impact you? You had a great adoptive father, so you had a great dad. So yeah, I was healthy. I had a positive personality. I was upbeat. I was loved. But it wasn't until I was older, I didn't have any black men in my life. I had black friends, white friends, Hispanic friends. So with peers, it was no problem. But it was when I started to interact with black men, I started to find myself. So all of a sudden, I'm starting to realize like my personality in certain situations is different. Where is that coming from? I realized it was coming back from this rejection that I was wearing from my biological father.
And how old were you when this first started?
It started in my teen years. I don't remember the exact date, but I remember it was my teenage years. And it was just when I'd start to interact with some black men, I think it took me a little to recognize what was happening. Like, we get uncomfortable around different people sometimes. That's normal. But I started to realize, there's a pattern here with black men. And so I had to make a decision. Is this how I want to live? Where is this coming from? And so I had to dive into this a little deeper and found like this is coming from childhood, and I have a fear of being rejected. So when I'm around black men, I'm finding myself acting different because of that. And so it was like, okay, I have work to do. I need to make sure that my personality isn't living in the past based on rejection and fear. I need to be the best version of myself no matter where I'm at. And that took, and we talked to kids about our 5 core values, and the value that I identify with was courage. Just having the strength to do what's right, rather than what's popular or comfortable. And to tell you the truth, none of it was comfortable. What was comfortable was like just avoid that feeling. And there's a lot of people that avoid certain people and certain situations because they're not willing to deal with maybe something that they need to deal with if they want to live at the level they want to live at. And so it's like, okay, be awkward forever around black men or deal with this and address it.
So what was like the first step that you did to kind of push through this?
Honestly, it was just realizing where this was coming from. Like there's a tendency to have this fear of rejection and to get in feelings or emotions that are toxic just because it was a trigger. So recognizing the trigger was like, okay, the next time this happens, I'm going to recognize the trigger. And once you know what's triggering you, the first step is just saying, I'm choosing not to take the bait of that trigger. I don't need to be insecure right now. Like, I'm not going to be insecure. I'm going to be who I am. I'm going to be confident. I'm going to be relaxed. I'm going to enjoy myself. They're just another person. I'm not going to let this weird trigger influencing me anymore. So it was almost like the realization of what the trigger was sparked me to make sure I was myself in the best version of myself instead of the insecure, weird self.
So, because we're talking about fear, so you're identifying the fear, you're calling it a trigger. And then when you're in those situations and you can identify that here it comes, I have this feeling, that's when you're saying like you have to change.
Yeah, it's a choice. And a lot of people, I think, wrongly just assume they have to live there. And we think, well, there's something wrong with me. I guess this is who I am. I guess this is how I am. And there are some schools of thought out there that would say, yep, it's past trauma. And so this is, unfortunately, that you have to live with this, right? There's different schools of thought out there. And I share this with kids because now it's like silly or even weird to think about the fact that I was once there, right? Kind of like some of the old habits and mindsets we have, we kind of like laugh at ourselves like, wow, that was ridiculous when I was afraid of the dark or when I was this or that.
So with kids, what do you find? Are they small fears? Are they big fears? Like what holds them back of like having the personality that they truly want?
Well, there are a lot of fears, and a lot of these fears they can be from trauma, but they can also be from like recent, I guess you'd call it trauma too, like bullying. When kids deal with bullying, bullying is one of the most toxic forms of rejection. And rejection is like a heavy presence, like a blanket that wraps itself around you. And it is hard to shake off because our brain, as human beings, we're not designed or wired to be rejected. It's not in our DNA. Being loved and accepted is how we're designed. So when someone intentionally rejects you and casts you aside and devalues you, it causes you to go within yourself and just like, it rattles you like, what's wrong with me? You question yourself. And that's really tough to deal with unless you can surround yourself with people that will help you go through that. Or if you're in 5-star and you have lessons like this, they'll say, oh, you know what? This is actually a normal response to rejection. You don't have to let it negatively shape your personality. So there's a girl from Westview Junior High, and she's from the Amish community. And we live near a sprawling, beautiful Amish community. And I want to unpack Hannah's story after we take a break right here.
Did you know that you can bring the values, lessons, and mindsets Coach Seth discusses on the 5-Star Life podcast to your local community? Schools are searching for programs and content that work. Just a simple introduction to your teacher or principal could be a game changer in your community. Inquire at 5starlife.org and someone from our team will be in touch.
Welcome back to the 5-Star Life Show. I'm your host, Coach Seth, and I'm joined virtually via Zoom with my co-host, Coach Mia.
Hey, Seth, and I know you guys miss me being there.
We do miss you being there. Yep. So, it's amazing with technology. You can co-host a show from a different state. That's pretty cool. So we're unpacking this idea that, teaching kids how to transform their personality. All these kids that are like, I don't like my personality. I'm do this. I'm do that. Well, the beautiful thing is we can change. We can grow. We can have whatever personality we want to have. So the question we're asking in this series to kids is, who do you want to be? That's a fun question to ask yourself. But in asking that question and getting an image of what kind of personality you want to have, you want to be more outgoing, you want to be more social, you want to be more laid back, you want to be more funny, whatever it is. You don't want to be so uptight, you don't want to be awkward. These are all good things to think about, but if we want to change our personality, we have to live by the 5 steps of courage. It's going to take some courage to take a hard look in the mirror at our current personality and how that's impacting our personal reality and how people experience us, what their experience is when they walk away. And unfortunately, there's research that says the average person's personality or emotional quotient, emotional intelligence, is that of a 13-year-old. In other words, we're not really growing beyond the interaction of a 13-year-old. And so, obviously, we want to do better.
I mean, as we're talking, I'm just thinking that we don't ask this question enough. I think with kids and even with adults is, who do you want to be? What do you want your personality to be? Because when I was younger, no one asked that question. You kind of figured it out. And it is a very painful process because no one was guiding you along the way.
Yeah. And so a lot of people get confused and people say, well, who do you want to be? And they say, well, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a teacher. I want to be a pro athlete. It's like, no, that's what you want to do. But who do you want to be? What are the characteristics? What are the values? What is the energy, the vibe that you want people to experience when they're around you? That's your personality. And the research says that a person's success, there's a portion of it that comes down to your skills, your knowledge, your abilities, but something like 80% of it comes down to your personality. Right? So think about getting a job and keeping a job. It's the personality of the person. It's usually not all the skills. Just about everybody in business will tell me I can train them in the skills, but it's their personality, how they interact as a team, the way they perceive things, right? Those are the big things. Of course, there's definitely some skill pieces that are monumental in somebody being successful. And we talk about that in 5-star. But going back to this whole fear piece, fear robs us of our personality. And it totally limits how we come across the world, limits our brand. And so just unpacking, how has fear limited the person that you want to be? And for students, I talked to a student named Hannah this past spring at Westview Middle School, and just asked her a question like, how has 5-Star Life impacted you? And she began to share the impact.
So like 2 years ago, I was at my lowest. I had severe depression and I could not focus on my schoolwork. I had bad grades and stuff. But then I found your videos and they helped me through some of that. Like the courage one. It helped me overcome some of the stuff I was going through. And I'm like a more happy person now. And I really find more joy out of life.
That is amazing. I love that. What were some things you're going on?
I was being bullied and made fun of and stuff. And it like really brought me down a lot, and my mental health and my self-confidence, it just like went way down. So to the point I was like not eating for like days.
And how did 5-Star help you learn how to change that?
Well, it taught me life lessons, and it told me like that sometimes it's like them that's the problem and they're going through stuff and not me, so I should really just like be nicer to them and maybe they'll treat me better.
So Hannah, we live in an Amish community, and it is amazing. Their culture is so vibrant and alive. And so you can imagine this girl who grows up, working the land with family, with confidence even, and then she's put into a public school setting, and all of a sudden her whole world is rocked. Why? Because she's now having to process this new level of rejection that she's not used to. And instead of going into a shell of who she was, she had the courage and the resilience to say, no, I'm okay. It's the other person that has the issue. I'm not going to let their issue become my issue. And I'm going to continue to let my personality come out, and I'm not going to let it be squashed by this. And this is what I love about kids. They get it, they hear it, they latch onto it, and then they implement it. And she's like, my life I'm so much happier. I have so much more joy, and I'm thriving. That's possible for us as adults.
It is. And it's so interesting. We obviously know a lot of people in the Amish community that are partners of 5-Star. We love them, and they are such a cool, they have such a cool culture. But I can also, as she was talking, I could also see them discussing this as a family. I mean, I just thought, man, that girl is so lucky, Hannah, that she has 5-Star and her family and her community to walk her through this. I can't say that a lot of cultures embrace, the youth and the values. And does that make sense, what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, it does make sense. And one of the things that we spoke about with kids is think about what she's being made fun of for. Her attire, her dress, and her head covering. And you think about what those represent. It represents a culture who values modesty and wants to avoid vanity, because their emphasis, their belief is, we should put way more focus on who we are, our character, and our personality. And so now she's in this public setting where this vain public setting that it's all about what you look like. It's all about what brands you wear. It's just so interesting how upside down that is.
No, it is. So what is the next step for like a Hannah or kids that once they identify that they have this fear or this obstacle, and then they go and embrace it. How do we teach them to continue and not fall back?
Well, it's amazing what we find with this particular topic. When you have rejection, you have fear, and you make the choice to be aware of it and not just avoid it, because that's what a lot of kids and a lot of adults, we avoid those situations that make us uncomfortable, that remind us of scary or uncomfortable situation. Instead, you embrace it, and it's through embracing it and the exposure of it. For her, it was like, I'm not going to bury myself at home. I'm not going to cower in the hallways. I'm going to be who I am. I'm going to embrace this, and I'm going to be okay. And for me, it was like doing the same thing. I think as people, it's called, one of the things they call it is exposure therapy. When you expose yourself to the fear, not abusive fears, but when you expose yourself to it with a new mindset and a new view of it, you experience freedom and growth, and you realize, actually, this is not scary anymore. So it's actually, you can gain traction really quick. And I know we got to take a quick commercial break and come back and dive back into this.
5 Star Life is a not-for-profit organization dedicated to changing the face of culture by changing kids' mindsets. Since 2005, we've impacted hundreds of thousands of lives thanks to the generous support of individuals, small businesses, corporations, and foundations. Are you interested in helping 5 Star Life grow into all 50 states? With your donation or introduction, you can help bring 5 Star Life to your community, school, and state. Go to 5starlife.org and send us an email today. That's FIVESTARLIFE.org.
Welcome back to the 5 Star Life Show. I'm your host, Coach Seth, and Coach Mia is joined virtually.
Hey.
So, we're talking about transforming your personality, talking about me, talking about Hannah, and it's amazing how some of these toxic situations can shape our personality and bring us down. But there's also some other situations that maybe aren't as dramatic that do the same thing. When you speak up in public, or you tell a joke and nobody laughs, or like if you're trying to step out and really shine and be more assertive and share your personality, and you fail, that rejection, even if it's not like people are like booing you or super mean, just the response alone can be like, oh, I think I'm going to crawl back into my shell of my personality and not go there anymore. And there's this really fine line and neat balance between taking in the feedback of people around us. That's how we learn like what works, what version of ourselves, is going to be received well by certain people, because I have to shift my personality based on who I'm around. Some people like certain forms of humor I give. Some people don't like those forms of humor, right? Even in my own family, there's certain things I can and can't say in parts of my personality. I have to kind of morph with it because I'm interacting with the world around me. But there's a difference between living with this sense of fear of rejection versus just being sensitive and being a good person to people around you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. How do you combat, that being sensitive and not having the attitude of, well, it's just who I am. If they like, if they don't like it, that's too bad. Because I think some people take that stance.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that's the great question to ask yourself. Who do you want to be? And if I am obnoxious and rude, and I blame that on my personality, then people will reject me. And it's not because they're bad people. It's because they're trying to protect themselves from something that makes them uncomfortable or from something that's toxic, right? And so that's why thinking about who we want to be, and that's where we get into this whole nother level, like self-awareness and being aware of our vibe and how we come across. That is literally one of the leading pieces of why the average adult has the emotional intelligence of a 13-year-old, because we don't want to hear it. This is just who I am. I'm really sick of dealing with people that are sensitive or with people that are going to reject me. So I'm just going to, this is a negative coping mechanism, right? This is a negative way to go about this. And that's not what Hannah did. Hannah didn't throw up her hand and say, okay, talk to the hand, I'm doing me. She said, I learned that maybe they have a problem and I just need to it helped me be kind to everybody and respectful to everybody, to respect them where they're at, and to not judge anybody by their appearance, but judge them based on their personality. That's what she said. Incredible wisdom from a 13-year-old.
A 13-year-old that was on the other side of that, where everybody was judging her by, the way she looked and the way she dressed, and then to come back and decide, no, I'm not doing that. And that's incredible.
So there's a lot of adults, so those kids that don't deal with this stuff grow up to become adults who they do take that approach. I don't want to hear it. If you don't like something I do, then that's your problem. And that's the slippery slope. If they're being rude and toxic on purpose, if they're a toxic individual, but there's a fine line between somebody that's giving you feedback, they're trying to help you and shine a little light and maybe a personality defect, which we all have some blind spots. Taking that approach is actually limiting you from being the person you want to be.
And don't you think that once you allow that into that, it's not criticism, but that evaluation into your life from somebody else, don't you feel like you're better? And then you're almost like, when you crave it and you want to tell me, how can I get better?
Yeah. And I think the telltale sign to know the difference, this is what we tell kids, when someone has your best interest in mind and they're coming out of a place of love and respect versus someone who just wants to tear you down, belittle you. That's the helpful telltale sign. But when someone is just like, hey, Mia, you've got a blur. Hey, Seth, this is how you came across. I can choose to be offended by that and take that as you're judging me. You're disrespecting me. You're rejecting me. They're not doing that. They're just trying to communicate with you.
So for kids, who do we teach them? Who are those people that you need to obviously always weigh it out? But is it a teacher? Is it a friend? Is it a parent? Where should they start to kind of learn to listen to these people? Yeah,
a respected adult is where you start. Peers, if you have a really good friend that you've had for a while, friends can be good, but when you're an adolescent, you never know what friends are going to say or do. They might give you great advice. They might give you terrible advice. So I think talking with friends is great, but adults can help you process at a little deeper level because they've been through it and are often on the other side of it, where peers might be in the middle of it too, and they might be answering questions out of emotion, which is always one of those things. I want to get advice. My mentors, I'm getting a perspective from them, not in the middle of their storm or pain, but on the other side of it. Because when I'm in the middle of a storm, there's lightning, there's thunder, it's cloudy, it's rocky. It's not clear. I can't see the whole picture from beginning to end. So when you get advice from people that are in a storm, that's taking a risk. Taking advice from people that are on the other side of it, even though there's a lot of people that say, no, I want somebody that's in the middle of it. I want somebody at my level. Well, that's the secret to staying stuck where you are. So getting it from somebody that's through it and on the other side is actually the best thing to do. So Mia, with your personality and with who you want to be, have you ever dealt, can you relate to this? Has rejection or those things ever caused you to go into a shell or impacts how you relate to yourself or others?
Yes. I withdraw, if there's fear or if, especially even this, if I don't speak clearly I'll rehash in my brain of, oh my gosh, you shouldn't have said it like that. But I've learned that, what, you push through, you move on. But yeah, I mean, years that I would just not speak, and I would never really face that fear, because it was just so much better if I just stayed away, kept to myself.
I think that's really normal. I think so many people live with these moments, and we think if we can just pretend they didn't happen, pretend we don't care, we just kind of move on and then avoid those situations in the future. But what we don't realize is all that stuff is this dull roar, and that impacts our personality. Unless you address it and deal with it, bring it out in the open. And the thing I love is, and I heard this from a grandparent a few weeks ago. He said, my secret to success, because he was a gangbanger and all kinds of horrible stuff, and he made changes, and he's like, I learned this secret that I can never let a moment ruin my day. Like, it's a moment. It happened. It's done. I'm going to learn from it, but now I'm going to move beyond that moment and move on as the person I want to be. It's so simple, but so freeing. And you can learn. We're brilliant creatures. We can learn really quick right in the moment. Like, oh man, I wish I would have said this, or I do that all the time. I'm like, I didn't really handle that. I should have done this, should have said this. Next time I'll get that. And then I move on.
And think about what we were not moving on from. It could be less than a minute, an interaction with somebody, and it could take your whole day. It could take your whole week. It's like, it's amazing when we don't face it.
And there are so many people, they call it toxic rumination, when you just let it just process over and over. You mull it over, every little thing you did wrong and how people took it and how they're going to judge you. And it's so toxic, and that will shape your personality. And that's all rooted in the fear of rejection. We're going to take one more break and come back and wrap up this show.
Five Star Life offers year-round programs for kids at our 350-acre training facility that we call Summit. These programs focus on 3 core components. First, each program includes lessons from our curriculum that targets kids' mindset. Secondly, each program teaches a skill like equine, archery, blacksmithing, basketball, fishing, boating, and many more. Thirdly, our programs connect kids to mentors we call coaches, who are trained to help kids live a 5-star life. Go to 5starlife.org to learn more or sign up your kids.
Welcome back to the 5-Star Life Show. I'm your host, Coach Seth, joined via Zoom, my co-host, Coach Mia. So this whole conversation started by talking about personality, asking the question, who do you want to be in life, and how do you want to come across to the world? What kind of relationships do you want to have? Like, our personality is so big. It's really the core of our experience socially with people. And it is something that we have the power to grow, develop, and choose. And so we're teaching kids one of the key pieces that shapes our personality in a negative way is fear. And if you want to step out of letting fear negatively shape your personality, you've got to have the courage, which we define as having the strength to do what's right rather than what's popular or comfortable. You have to have the courage to say, okay, I'm going to start shutting down these fearful thoughts and emotions that are shaping my personality. And at the core level, a lot of times those fears are truly the fear of being rejected socially. So what did I say wrong that time? And oh my gosh, I'm just going to meditate on everything I did wrong. And that thing that somebody said about me, like even when somebody corrects you, it's easy to take that. And then the gems in our lives who are truly just trying to help us and coach us, and they bring things up to us, it's easy to take that and spin that negatively and walk away and overthink about that. And then that can shape how we interact with them the next time. Right?
I think sometimes too, that fear then becomes anger. when someone is trying to help you in their way. And if you're not receiving it, at least for me, I would flip it. Then which would be worse, because then you're compounding two things that are affecting your personality.
Well, yeah, when somebody's trying to point something out, it's like, I'm never good enough. Fine. Yep. Thanks for just throwing me in a hole, digging a hole. I'm just digging a hole, and you're putting me in it. You're putting me under it. And it's usually people that love you enough to go there. They're not trying to do that. They're trying to get you out of the hole. But a surefire way to get someone who truly loves you and has the courage and even the vulnerability to put themselves in the arena with you in that way, only people who truly love you will do that. It's the lovers or the absolute haters are the only people that will ever go there. But when we respond that way, with this rejection, these triggers, these negative emotions, and we respond ugly, then those loved ones that actually can point out blind spots and help us really grow our personality, they will just say, I'm going to keep my thoughts to myself moving forward. They don't want to change. They don't want to grow. I love them, but I about got my head bit off, so I'm going to pass next time. And then we wonder why we don't have that connection. We wonder why we don't have that level of intimacy. And so this is a deep topic.
So our last segment. So what can you wrap all this up, or maybe like what are some steps?
So it comes back to this idea that you don't have to let toxic people, the haters, shape your personality negatively. And you don't have to negatively respond to the people that love you and are just trying to coach you. Where we all want to be and where we should want to be at a place where, man, I want to have the personality where I can interact with people, and if I stumble or if somebody points something out, I can take that in, I can receive it, and I can put that into the betterment of my personality. That takes a lot of maturity. So the low-hanging fruit we start with is just, let's start with making sure I know as I'm speaking, people have been thinking about different relationships and how their personality morphs in a negative way because they fear being rejected, right? It's people who they have a fear because it's a fear like mine from childhood, and they've never addressed it. I would just say the first step is addressing that and saying, don't run from it, embrace it. And I'm not saying it has to take a long time. You're going to realize, oh, you know what? I was rejected by this, or I had this happen. And you embrace that, and then you say, okay, what do I need to edit? How do I want to approach this the next time in an environment? And you start to predict, okay, when's the next time I'll be in an environment like this? Well, this could happen at the grocery store, or this could happen at my kid's school, or this could happen at work, or these certain people maybe that come to mind, you're going to interact with them. And so what I did was I made mental notes like, okay, next time, here is my go-to. And it was like a pre-choice choice. Before I'm in that situation, here's how I'm going to handle it. And so then when you get there, you're not like, oh my gosh, here I am again. You're like, okay, I prepared for this. Here's how I'm going to handle myself. And it's not going to be perfect the first time, maybe. Like, I was probably still a little awkward around the next black man I encountered, but I faked it a little bit probably. And I realized like, oh, that was totally fine. Like, I didn't just survive. It was good. And I just started to walk away from those conversations thinking that was almost silly that I was afraid of that conversation. And so every exposure, every event, you just start to reaffirm who you are, your personality, your confidence grows, your comfortability grows, and you just, incident by incident, you walk yourself into who you want to be. So it's really that exposure, that growth. It's the repetitions that work. Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah. And even on a simpler scale, I was with our family and we were with some people and I had somebody that said something that it irritated me. I didn't like my response. So I was like, right in the moment, I'm like, I'm changing that response. And so I was able to, you can do that long term, but you can also do it in the moment. Like, you know what? I'm going to be light. I'm going to be open. I'm not going to stay in this spot of offense. So I think there's some things we can do long term for the next incident, but I think there's some moments that sometimes you're in the middle of it and you catch yourself like, oh, I'm in this negative place. I don't have to wait till it's over. I don't have to stay here for the next 5 minutes. I'm flipping it right now. So then I would just try to make light of it like, oh man, that's a sensitive subject for me. Don't bring that up again, or laugh or whatever. So
those are the important times, because that's also the time where you want to shut down and, you're already mortified and you don't want to recover. But the longer that you don't recover, the harder it is.
Yeah, it's embarrassing. It's all of those things. And the quicker that you can identify that and the quicker you can step back into the arena as your best self, you can recoup and save some face internally and with the people you're with. Like, oh, they bounce back. Or, oh, they're good. Because other people around us, they're also reading the situation thinking, and they feel for you. They're like, oh man, I hope they're okay, or I hope that I didn't hurt their feelings. And if you can bounce back and show like, I'm actually okay, I'm good. It helps everybody. And it shows we're human. We're human. It's part of the human experience. We're not perfect. We're frail at times. And owning that and being open actually helps other people learn and grow and be comfortable in their skin too. And that's where you learn who's really for you. So, interesting stuff. So I just want to encourage our listening audience, if you enjoyed this conversation, or maybe you didn't enjoy it, it was a little uncomfortable, but it was helpful, please do us a favor. Please share this episode with someone you think it might benefit. It helps us out when you subscribe to this and when you like it as well. But thank you so much for tuning in. Also, I want to tell you, if this has been helpful for you, imagine how powerful this would be for kids in your community. Go to 5starlife.org to bring 5-Star Life to your community. Go to 5starlife.org to learn more. Thanks for tuning in. And Mia, thanks again.
At 5-Star Life, we are changing the face of culture through education and sports by changing the most important piece of a human being's life, their mindset. If you are interested in being a part of our journey, please visit 5starlife.org for more information on volunteer and donation opportunities.